Good evening. Welcome back to my late night spook show here on the Horror Metal channel. I'm Hellhound, and one of the earliest videos I did on this channel was I reviewed the album Killers by Iron Maiden. And I since set that video to private because it kind of sucked. So I'm going to go ahead and redo that review here right now. So here's to hoping that this video turns out better than that one did. So yeah, Killers by Iron Maiden. Oh yeah. So, Killers, released in 1981, was the band's second album and last to feature vocalist Paul Di'Anno before he was replaced by the legendary Bruce Dickinson. Overall, a superior vocalist, in my opinion. But more on that later. This is also the first album to feature the guitar wizardry of Adrian Smith, replacing Dennis Stratton, who was on the previous album. And he would stay with Maiden for years and years to come and become a staple in their classic lineup. You know, it was behind many excellent albums. So, anyway, while Killers wasn't quite as well received as some of their later gems, I still feel it's an important and influential part of their history. So, let's dig a little deeper and see what makes this album so integral. So yeah, Maiden's sophomore effort has some truly great songs, and although I don't quite regard it quite as highly as their magnificent debut, I prefer that one by a hair. You know, I think it's kind of underrated, and it's just an old school metal masterpiece. This one definitely does hold a special place in my heart. It was actually the second album I ever bought by them after Number of the Beast, which was their next album, the first with Dickinson, like I said. And so, yeah, when I listen to great songs like Rothschild and Murs and the Rue Morgue, you know, I can't help but wonder what the band's career would have been like had they stayed with original vocalist Paul Di'Anno, and as well as drummer Clive Burr, rest in peace, you know. So, yeah, unfortunately, we wouldn't have had classic Maiden albums like Peace of Mind and Power Slave, both fronted by Dickinson's powerful pipes, of course. But, you know, it's not hard to understand why some of Maiden's fans have eventually divided into two camps. Those who prefer the 80s Dickinson streak of genius, and those that believe the first two albums represent the band at its most vital. I kind of a bit of both. I kind of like both eras, you know, both versions of the band. Although I clearly do belong to the former camp, you know, like I said. Although almost all my favorite albums involving Bruce's vocals, I have grown very, very fond of the first two albums. You know, I loved them when I first heard them, and I still love them now. They just get better and better every time I hear them. You know, there's just no denying it. If you want to hear Maiden at their closest to the pack of the raw, pure, new wave of British heavy metal bands, Killers is a monumental record that was nearly without peer. If you discount a few bands like, you know, say Judas Priest. It just takes the infectious energy and good hooks of the self-titled debut to new heights. Even though, yeah, I do say that I do prefer the debut by only slightly, but this one does expand and improve upon it in certain ways. So yeah, what makes this entry in the discography of one of the most successful metal bands of all time so rewarding to listen to? Well, one reason is that every song on the album is really, really good, and I never found myself skipping over any tracks, something that some of the later Maiden albums cannot boast at all, you know? You know, when I listen to Number of the Beast, or even Peace of Mind, I do find myself skipping over a couple tracks here and there, you know, something that I never do with Killers, which I think is excellent in its entirety. No filler, in my opinion. Yeah, there they are. Paul Di'Anno, Clive Burr, Steve Harris, Dave Murray, and Adrian Smith. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I think the real reason this album is often overlooked, you know, and an overlooked monument in their history is because of the brilliant musicians behind it. You know, Steve Harris is my favorite bass player of all time, and also one of my favorite songwriters as well. He writes most of the lyrics for the band too. His heavy bass lines, which lace every song like the icing on the cake, are just so soothing to my ears that I could listen to them all day long. And of course, the dual lead guitar attack of Dave Murray and Adrian Smith, who, like I said, made his debut on this album, was first heard on this record, and seems like it was meant to be right from the start. Yeah, the guitar duo's sound is so powerful and melodic as they kick off one another in nailing twin leads. I can definitely hear a Murray Smith influence in several great bands that came out much later. Yeah, so Clive Burr, who would only stay on board for one more album after this, was a very solid drummer as well. His performance is great. Back in the day, I especially love how his double bass really has this galloping sound, like a horse charging towards you at record speed. And the tom and cymbal crash combination is sometimes overwhelming, like so much force is hitting on you, just making you headbang relentlessly. Now on to the fun part, the much discussed vocal talents of Paul Di'Anno. In my opinion, Di'Anno has unfairly been the subject of mostly negative criticism by fellow Maiden fans. Sure, he's no Bruce Dickinson, who can sing rings around him, perhaps, at least most of the time. There's some songs I think that Di'Anno does a better job with. But his voice fits so well with Maiden's first two albums, and the feel that his singing gives great tracks like Purgatory couldn't have been achieved by a lesser vocalist, or maybe even Dickinson for that matter, who can't seem to capture the edge that Di'Anno had during live performances of songs from that early era. I honestly think that people hate on Di'Anno only because he isn't Dickinson, and sometimes they don't even know that Maiden had a different vocalist on the early material. But, whatever. I guess I can't... I can imagine the disappointment one could get after popping in the first album expecting to hear Bruce, but all in all, I think Paul had a very unique, raw-sounding, punk-like voice that flowed well with the style performed by the excellent instrumentalists at the time. Perfect for early Maiden, and he had a great stage presence and image as well, refusing to conform to the general heavy metal look that, instead bringing much older punk rock, kind of classic rock and roll attributes to his stage persona. I can understand why Maiden eventually kicked him out. Drug problems, lack of ambition, just, not wanting to commit and all that stuff. But, I'm overall glad they did, because my life would be incomplete without incredible records like Somewhere in Time. But Killers has some truly memorable songs. They're nowhere near as good as the pristine New Wave original tracks found on the first album, in my opinion. Well, maybe not nowhere near, but I think it is very close. But I do prefer the debut, like I said. But these songs are still a force to be reckoned with, no matter how you look at it, and they don't get the recognition they deserve still to this day. The title track gives the listener a feeling of arcane primal fury that makes you want to stomp around the room and shake your head to that wonderful riff played during the verse. It's also a reminder that Dickinson isn't the only Maiden singer able to hit those powerful high notes. Paul could really sing when he wanted to. Just listen to Phantom of the Opera from the first album. Also on this CD, Prodigal Son is a great number, a slower, more harmonious track. Though I did enjoy Remember Tomorrow and Strange World, the two slower songs from the debut, a lot better. But Prodigal Son's still great too. And the first song on the album, Wrathchild, is very invigorating, punk-sounding tune, perfectly set up for the opening track, Ides of March. So, losing my mind. So, my favorite song on the album is probably a toss-up between either the bass-driven classic, Murs and the Rue Morgue, or the pure rock and roll, Innocent Exile, or Another Life, which is filled with memorable guitar solos. Murs and the Rue Morgue, like I said, it is a spectacular song, just great to sing along to. There's also Genghis Khan, the excellent instrumental track, the second of two instrumental tracks on this album, actually. And it's played at top speed in the vein of Transylvania from the first album, and perfectly introduces the next track, Innocent Exile. So, yeah, I would love to see Maiden play some more of these songs live, though most wouldn't really cut it with Dickinson's more soaring, operatic vocal style. But Killers certainly is a strong case for the original Maiden being every bit the contender that his next incarnation would prove to be. A true heavy freaking metal album with songs not about slaying dragons or Egyptian pharaohs or political viewpoints or dogfights or any cheesy rock and roll party anthems. Just an expression of the attitude that was prominent in the early 80s heavy metal scene and a staple in the career of one of the greatest bands in music history, metal or otherwise. So, yeah, like I said, unfortunately it is often overlooked and left in the shadow of their classic lineup led by Dickinson, who, yes, probably does surpass his predecessor in most ways, but not enough to totally disregard what Di'Anno did for the band and their early roots. Yeah, Number of the Beast was the next album, which was, revolutionary for not only Maiden's career, but heavy metal as a genre. It was the beginning of several classic Maiden albums. Each just as enjoyable as the last, spanning the band's career over 3 decades and etching their name into heavy metal's unwritten Hall of Fame. But keep in mind, we were listening to epic albums like Seven Sons of the Seventh Son that is all owed to an almost forgotten entity still waiting in the darkness for the respect it deserves, a little gem called Killers. Iron Maiden's second album, and still one of their best, in my opinion. If for this incarnation of Maiden never existed and laid the groundwork for what came after, we would probably never have the Maiden that we so effortlessly admire today. So, all in all, this is a fantastic landmark in Maiden's career and a must-have for anyone interested in the early years of the band, which is off to a great and exciting start. Killers by Iron Maiden. Check it out. Alright guys, I'm Hellhound. Thank you for watching my show here on the Horror Metal channel. Until next time, where I'll probably redo my review of South of Heaven by Slayer. So, see you then.